Gaming is a technology, and with any technology there's going to be a lot of iteration. For instance, between this thing and this thing, you know, we got this. Oops.
Technology. We're always trying to invent new ways to do things. I mean, someone once upon a time looked at a cow and said, wait, hold on, we can improve that. And then they made the steak, and then someone looked at that and said, wait, hold on, and now we got hot dogs. But in between, with any technology, there's a lot of experimentation. Not everything goes right. Getting from here to here takes a lot of work and innovation, and along the way, we've tried a lot of just things that, surprised, didn't work. Motion controls, webcam games, how about the keypad controller? That's delightful. And now, in 2019, game streaming is coming to town with the likes of Google Stadia. Actually, heck, we've had game streaming since 2014 with Steam's in-home streaming. That said, that's a game running from one computer beamed to another computer, and I guess Stadia is that. They assert that the console is powered by, 10.7 GPU teraflops, 16 gigabytes of RAM, 8K 120 FPS gameplay action. You can't do this on Nintendo, motherfuckers! But you're renting it for $20 a month and beaming it into your house. But what is game streaming? What drawbacks does it have? I mean, we could look to the Steam link for some help in figuring that out. Well, my computer can't do 10 trillion calculations a second, or whatever the heck a teraflop is. For this demonstration, this is a good example of what we're dealing with. Just assume that with Stadia, none of the lag is going to be caused from the hardware. With Steam home streaming and with Google Stadia when that launches, you have a rendering computer and a display computer. We tell the rendering computer to start up our game, that gets beamed to our display computer, which just needs to be able to refresh the screen at a constant rate, which isn't all that difficult to be honest. If you can watch a video at 60 FPS, you can play a game at 60 FPS, hypothetically. The rendering computer sends the game stream to the player 60 times a second, the player presses buttons, that information is sent from the display computer to the rendering computer, hopefully almost instantly, and then you can play, no matter the distance. In execution? Oh, it works. Oh, it works perfectly. Note that my connection is in excess of 30 megabits a second. Steam Link just runs like this. Now, Stadia asserts that 20 megs a second will be more than enough for 4K 60 FPS games. But I don't know. You tell me how feasible that sounds in light of what Steam's doing. Granted, in that case, it could be the computer is both downloading and uploading, so there is a chance that at half that bandwidth we can make a one-way version of this more than possible. So I'll reserve judgment on that until they actually prove 20 megabits a second is a viable speed for that large of an image that consistently with sound. Also notice that when your connection dips, the bitrate has to dip alongside it, which leads to poorer visual fidelity, in a way that game developers never really intended for their game to dip. If a game is chugging on just normal hardware, you can always load in lower quality textures or models, but you never have to compress the image like a YouTube video. That can lead to a lot of problems. If you're playing a game with small text, it's harder to read that text. Also, when the connection falters, you're going to have input lag as well. Input lag is going to be something streaming players are going to have to learn to deal with, something to kind of play around, but quick question. How do you adapt to input lag that's always changing? With, say, the NES games on the Switch Online service, when playing in TV mode, you're going to have input lag that will make games like Punch-Out much harder to play. Ditto rhythm games on an HD TV, or really any game that needs these sorts of frame-perfect inputs to master. Fighters, RTSs, Twitch shooters. These games suffer if you have to deal with input lag, but once you have a feel for it, you can play around it. Hit a button a little earlier to get the intended response. This becomes impossible with a fluctuating connection. Your input lag is going to be all over the place. Things like Counter-Strike or Mortal Kombat are going to be even harder to play than normal, and you really won't be able to master it the same way somebody playing on their own regular computer could. But provided a perfectly stable connection, yeah, sure, I guess this is a way to play games. I could access the games I like, they could hypothetically run at max settings at 4K. I don't really own any 4K screens personally, save for a TV or two at my permanent residence, but I'm not there all the time. And even then, our cable boxes are 1080p, and we pretty much only own DVD players. So the only time I ever actually see 4K is when I hook my laptop to the TV and play videos off of it, which is once a year for 20 minutes of my own amusement. Tangent over. I can play games at their highest settings, no problem, for $20 a month, and I can access a library of... Oh, wait, you thought these games are going to be free? Games on Stadia will be priced publisher to publisher, but Google doesn't see them cutting into those prices over the fact that the service costs something monthly. This means that a year's worth of Stadia is going to cost, at most, $120. With that same amount of money, you could get a secondhand Xbox 360, a Wii, or a PS3, as well as maybe 3 or 4 games, or you could pay for a streaming service with no games. Or maybe a couple trials, some demos, free stuff like Fortnite, and maybe older games like the DOS-era Dooms. I'm just throwing things at the wall. We have no idea what the free offerings on Stadia will even be, if there will be any. There's also the prospect of maybe getting a free game a month or the like, but that's still going to be a really steep investment either way. That said, an Xbox One S is $300, and say if you get 3 games a year, 2 at $60 and 1 at $30. Your first year's investment is $390. By 2 years, it's $480, and by 3 years, it's $570. Sure, 3 years of Stadia will run just $360, but that's without games. Again, if you're spending $90 on games a year, that's $210 a year for Stadia, which, while cheaper than the Xbox and the games year one, you don't buy a new Xbox every year. At least you don't plan to buy a new Xbox every year. But hey, you could play those games on your phone. That's gotta mean something, right? Except, hold on. If you care enough about games like Destiny and Fortnite, you already have a place to play them. Sure, a PS4, an Xbox, a Switch, or hell, a phone or tablet might not have 10,000 tera-whatever's the Stadia console has, but you've already got a dedicated place to play those games. You paid for it once, and now your only expenditure is new games, maybe an accessory or two year to year. New controllers, screen protectors, stuff like that. If I'm already a core gamer paying to play the latest AAA games, there's like a 90% chance I'm not just borrowing a PS4 from the library or something. And if I'm a straight up casual gamer, then I'm not really interested in Doom, Destiny, Assassin's Creed. I'm gonna stick with things like Dr. Mario World or Cut the Rope, games I can play in short bursts without needing to pay a monthly fee. So who benefits from Google Stadia then? I don't know for sure, but I see a couple general audiences Stadia is really gonna have to find a niche in. The first one I see is the fallen core gamer. Someone who was big into the AAA scene between like the N64 and the Xbox 360, but since has become a casual gamer, maybe due to time restrictions, or maybe not wanting to buy a new console every few years, or maybe they just don't know where to start these days. These people can toss a gamepad in their bag and then use their phone to play their games library, get access to AAA games anytime, anywhere. The second audience I see is the poverty core gamer. Due to financial hardships, this would be someone who lives paycheck to paycheck, and while making money might not be hard, holding on to that money can be. They might only have $50 left at the end of each month, which makes it hard to afford a console. The solution? You get a gamepad, get a Stadia subscription, and then when they can't afford a game, they can get it, hardware be damned. Get an HDMI adapter for your phone, and you can display those AAA games on their TV at max quality, high resolution, no problem. Monthly subscriptions might cost a lot at the end of the year, but month to month can be a lot more manageable than trying to save up for a Switch. And lastly, honestly I can see this working out great for commuters. If you've got a console and desktop at home, you've got your phone, your work computer, and a smart TV in the break room, you've got like 4 places you could sign into Stadia and get a game going. No need for a laptop or a Switch, and your games and saves would be available anywhere. In short, I think Stadia and other game streaming services have a place to call their own. But will they replace consoles and PC?
Get a load of this guy, am I right? Up top!
Of course not! Game archival is becoming a growing trend with fans of all kinds, and people have already spent all this money on consoles and computers. You think they're just gonna give it all up? Of course not! You might have people who are used to the system and will see consoles as archaic in like 10 years, like what we're seeing with mobile gaming, but young fans just really don't care for consoles and PCs. They have Fortnite on their phone, that's all they really need. And as for me, I mean, the only way you could get me to play Fortnite again is if it was the last game on Earth, but I've got my console and PC games, I really don't need anything else. Streaming services like Stadia make sense for a subsection of fans, but only a subsection of them, and it's going to take years to build out a good-sized consumer base. That's a problem given how costly the service is for Google, and how they've been known to shutter a concept when it just doesn't rake in success for them. Consider what happened to Google Plus or YouTube Gaming. Google Stadia, as it currently stands, is shaping up to be a neat idea that will have a proprietary demographic of fans, and it will likely last a few years. But a lot can change between now and November. No matter what, I think technology like this has its place in history. I mean, someone has to innovate whether the outcome is good or not, because then we know where the shortcomings are and we can improve them. Number pads for games this complex are ridiculous. But past that, the problem became that the number pad wasn't ergonomic. You're always looking down at it. And now we have controllers with just as many buttons, but now things are much more manageable. Motion controls had a rough start, but nowadays the likes of the Vive's controllers and the Switch's gyroscopes make motion controls feel intuitive and responsive. And alongside that, I can see these prototypes in game streaming lead to a more robust future for games where you might, say, have the game saved locally but use a cloud-based computer to boost performance. I'm just throwing things at the wall. Who knows what's next for gaming? That's the exciting part for me. We just don't know what's next. And I'm looking forward to seeing what's next.
I don't think game streaming is going to be an outright failure, but I'm not sure it's going to be the success Google thinks it can be. It's going to be an uphill battle to get fans to move from PC or console or mobile architecture onto the game streaming platforms. And they're going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting to make sure we know exactly what we're getting into and understand as a consumer that this is worth our money. So maybe Google shouldn't even invest in game streaming. Maybe they should do the next best thing, which is to stream videos of the games. Crap, they've been doing that for years, haven't they?
If you like this video and you'd like to see more, I'd recommend subscribing. Patreon and social media links are in the description.